Hi, and welcome to a new episode. Today we're here with Jordan, and we are going to discuss about safe sex practices while we travel abroad. And Jordan, she is a physician assistant, a women's sexual health educator, an intimacy coach, and the creator of Vaginas, Vulvas, and Vibrators Podcast. And I listen to her podcast, and it's very informative, and you can expect to learn a lot from it, and also laugh while you're listening to it as well, because Jordan is super funny, and also she shares a lot of great information. So Jordan, thank you so much for being here, and thank you so much for your time.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I am really excited to chat with you as an avid traveler myself. I am so excited to be a part of this with you.
Thank you so much. So I would like to start this interview, Jordan, by asking you about what does safe sex means to you. So let's start with the basics. So what is safe sex for Jordan?
Yeah, I think that that is a wonderful place to start because of the fact that there are so many different definitions of safe sex. And the reality is, all sex comes with some risk, and we are all trying to minimize our risk with our safer sex practices, which can include a variety of different components, which we are going to jump into here today, too. But I think that safe sex is using whatever type of contraceptive that is either preventing pregnancy, if you're not attempting pregnancy, whatever type of prevention you're using for STI minimization. But then we also have to talk about from like the safety side and the physical side, and minimizing physical hurt and emotional hurt in sex as well, because I think that's all a part of it. So it's not just STIs. And when we think of safe sex, we a lot of times think of STIs. It's so much more than that.
Got it. Okay. So thank you so much for providing that definition. And also, in your opinion, what are some unique challenges that we as women can face in terms of practicing this safe sex while when we're traveling?
Yeah, when we travel abroad, I think that there's a lot of different components here too, but traveling abroad, you have safe sex in that where are you meeting people from?
Mm.
Is your life in danger or safe? And so I think that's the first component, especially as women. A lot of times, if we are in heteronormative situations, the male could be potentially larger, potentially dangerous. And so making sure that we have some sort of vetting process that we're going through when we are meeting people overseas. Do we tell our friends, like, hey, I'm meeting this individual, here's their information? Like, what type of safety for your personal safety are you practicing? I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges as women that we face, different than men, especially.
Yeah, definitely it's something personal safety, something really important to take into consideration. And I'm really glad that you mentioned this because when I asked these questions, I was not expecting this answer. I was expecting more something about STIs or birth control, but definitely it's very important to look after your personal safety first, because that's the main thing.
Yeah. And first of all, I will tell you, I've had a lot of sex abroad. And there is, from a physical safety standpoint, yes, things happen abroad, right? Things happen in our own backyards. So that really doesn't change. It's just not letting our guard down and not being conscious or aware of our personal safety when making these decisions. And so it's not to minimize the fact that like it doesn't matter where you're located.
Yeah. Yeah, of course, not everything, as you said, it can happen in your own backyard or while you're traveling abroad. And yeah, and I think that it is important to also look after when we're traveling, because I mean, you mentioned you had a lot of sex while traveling abroad. And I think as women, we're also more open to have more sex while we're traveling, and also depending like the reason why you travel as well. I was actually discussing about this topic with someone, and this person was like, but why abroad? Like, you should look for this like everywhere you go. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. But then also I know a lot of stories where women just travel after a breakup or just after that very intense period in their life, and then they are just more open to have sexual experiences while they're in different countries.
I would agree that that is such a true statement, and that a lot of women travel as a way of reconnecting with themselves and maybe rebirthing themselves in ways. And so when you do that, sometimes there is sexual exploration that happens. Not always is that the case. Sometimes people go to avoid sexual intimacy, right? But when you start feeling into your body and maybe feeling in a comfortable, safe place abroad, exploring that can be really fun. And it's really adventurous, which for a lot of women, when it comes to what you need for sex to have a good experience, sometimes including that adventure or that new scene or something a little bit like that gives it a little pizzazz, right, is going to turn us on and make us more interested in that experience as well.
Yeah, no, for sure. 100%. So, Jordan, I want to get more into also some strategies that you have used to protect yourself. So, since we start with the topic of physical safety, what are some strategies that you have used to protect yourself?
So, physical safety, I think it depends. Are you traveling alone or with other people? So, on this podcast, it's all about solo traveling. So, what I would do as a solo traveler is let somebody know who is available. Like, tell a girlfriend, hey, I'm going out with this person. Here's my location. Share your location on your phone, especially for those of us that have iPhones. You can do that. I recommend that outside of the sexual side as well. Like, share your location, no matter where you're dating, no matter who you're hooking up with. I think that always having somebody who can find you is important. That would be one really important strategy. Another one is getting a picture of their ID, or their passport, and maybe sharing that with a girlfriend or somebody that you trust. If you're staying in a hostel or you've met some friends, maybe going with other people is helpful as well. But it also just kind of depends on the situation.
Got it. Perfect. That's a great tip, especially the one about taking a picture of their ID or passport. I've never thought about that. And some situations came to my mind where I was like, I should have done that. But anyways, now I know for the future.
I have a handful of girlfriends who send me a picture of their IDs and like their dating profiles before they go on any date with somebody, so that I always have access to that in case something happens, because it can. And that's the unfortunate reality.
Yeah, no, exactly. No, better safe than sorry. And it doesn't cost any energy to be like, hey, just, send a screenshot of the dating profile, or just, hey, give me your ID. I'm going to go with you. Like, let me at least take a picture of your ID.
Yeah. And if they have any hesitation to that or questioning why, that should be kind of a opportunity for you to reflect and be like, okay, if they are hesitant for this, why is that? And is that somebody you still want to hang out with or spend time with if they're not worried about your safety and feel like that's a threat to them?
Yeah, no, for sure. That's a solid advice right there. And also now, Jordan, what are some strategies that you have used and that you advise for women to use to protect themselves against sexually transmitted infections while traveling?
Yeah. So sexually transmitted infections, there's two ways that you prevent them. One is condoms, helps minimize your risk, but condoms don't protect you from everything. There are many infections that are spread via skin to skin. And so they are going to reduce your risk, but not totally eliminate your risk. The other is abstinence. And we're not here to talk about abstinence today. So that obviously is really not a very helpful tool when we are talking about hooking up abroad.
Got it. Okay, perfect. And just like to get more into the basics again, like what are some of those sexually transmitted diseases that can get transmitted through skin to skin?
Yes, I love this question. So some of the STIs that are transmitted through skin is going to be HPV, human papillomavirus, HSV or herpes. Syphilis is another one as well. The other thing to talk about as far as risk minimization and STI prevention is having a conversation, talking with your potential partner. When was the last time you were tested? Was it positive for anything? How many sexual partners have you had since then? And what types of sexual acts are you maybe performing? What types of barriers are you using, if any? Having a conversation will also reduce your risk of STIs. Now, the flip side to that is sometimes there is a language barrier when traveling abroad as well. And so learning how to be creative and doing what you can to also protect yourself and carrying your own condoms if that's something that you're interested in. I am a full supporter of that. I keep some in my suitcase that I can whip out right here. I always have them in my suitcase. I was actually dating somebody and that got me in trouble for carrying them. And I'm like, you just don't know. And as women, like, we can protect ourselves. We have the power. If you want to carry condoms, carry condoms. Don't leave that up to your partner to be their responsibility and only their responsibility.
That's a great tip right there. Just carry your own condom. Yeah, because it's like when you are in the moment and then you're like, okay, do you have any condoms? And the person says no, and you're like, okay, what are you gonna do? Do I put myself at risk or and just do it or just and everything right there? But if you have your own condoms, you can be like, hey, just okay, if you don't have any, just let me go to my purse, get some, and you can wear it, and we're all happy.
Exactly.
Great, thank you. And no, thank you so much for that advice, Jordan. And now that brings me to the next question. What would you say to women who are planning to travel and want to ensure that they are going to practice safe sex when they're traveling?
So I think you have to determine, like, what is your definition of safe sex? And what does safe sex look like for you? And that all sex has risk. So what does that look like? Are you somebody who wants to focus on communications and not use barriers? If so, that's okay. If you're somebody who, vice versa, maybe you want to use barriers and not have conversations. Maybe you're somebody who wants to do both. Each of you listening, or each of us, has the ability to make that decision for themselves and what they feel comfortable. I, of course, are going to encourage, or I would encourage, communication and barriers as like the highest level of risk minimization. But again, it all has risk. And what is your risk tolerance level? It's kind of like the stock market. I can't believe I'm going to throw this in here, but you invest in the stock market, there's a risk. It may grow, it may drop, it may stay the same. Same with sex. You don't know what is going to happen and what is your level of risk that you are willing to take.
No, but thank you for throwing that in here. That is actually a great analogy. So defining what safe sex means to you, and then also being clear on what's your level of risk, because we all don't have the same level of risk, and also all of us will not deal with the consequences in the same way. So I think also that's something to take into consideration.
Well, I was just going to add to that, it also consider pregnancy, right? So is that something that you are wanting to avoid, wanting to attempt? What does that look like for you? And, kind of talking about, are you taking preventative measures as far as birth control? Are you doing condoms as pregnancy prevention? What is that for you? And so I think that, there's more than just one answer. It's a very individualized collection of answers to create what works best for your own safer sex practices.
Yeah, that's true. It's definitely something to take into consideration as well. And Jordan, are there any particular resources or organizations that we can turn to in case that we're looking more information and support related to this topic?
Yes, there are lots of different resources. I think the CDC is a really great resource for Center for Disease and Control for STI information. WHO, World Health Organization, is also a great resource. Planned Parenthood is a great resource. You can also listen to millions of different podcasts. You can check out my podcast. I've done episodes on STIs. I've done episodes on pregnancy prevention, birth control options, all of that. So there are millions of resources out there for you to use. If you're looking for like birth control as far as being accessible, there are lots of websites that offer online delivery of birth control. There are websites for STI testing as well, where they send you a kit and it's a home collection, you send it in. So there are so many different tools where you don't have to have insurance, you don't have to go see a provider, that you can do in the comfort of your own home as well.
Got it. No, that's great. Thank you so much. Because also there's also some stigma around like, okay, how do I get my birth control? Like, how do I carry it with me, or like do I have to go to a doctor? And also, which actually now I want to ask you, how do you do it when you travel? I know we already know about you carry your own condoms, but if in case that you use any other birth control, how do you deal with that?
Yeah. So I am kind of a interesting person in that I don't use birth control. I use natural family planning and I monitor my menstrual cycle and my ovulation to prevent pregnancy. So if I am in my ovulation window or my fertile window, I would either abstain or use condoms, most likely abstain to prevent pregnancy.
No, that's great. And also, I'm very glad that you mentioned that as well, because I also use that method as well, and I measure my temperature as well, because actually birth control doesn't do me any good. I actually usually get depressed and bloated and start losing my hair. So it's been terrible for me and birth control. So it's also good to know that you're a professional in this topic and you are using different methods like natural family planning.
Yeah. I think that I'm assuming you're about the same age as me. And I think that we're part of that new wave where a lot of women have maybe spent years on birth control and are like, okay, I'm done with this. I want to see how my body naturally responds. And I think also as we learn about our bodies, we learn that like you can't get pregnant all month. There is a fertile window around when you ovulate. It's a small window of about 5 to 7 days of where you can actually conceive. Other than that, you're not going to get pregnant. But we're not taught that in school. We're not empowered with that information. And so, yeah, I have a lot of opinions. I actually work in infertility as a PA. And so I'm very familiar with using birth control and using all of these hormonal options. Yet I still personally, it doesn't work for me. And some of you may relate to that. It is okay to be empowered and choose what works best for you because it's not for everybody.
Exactly. And it's okay to have opinions. And I think this is a topic that it should be important to be discussed. And just as you have to be clear on what safe sex means to you, you also have to be clear on what type of birth control works for you. So I know for me and my body, like hormonal birth control doesn't work. And so that's why I had to look for other natural methods. And actually, it's very empowering to know things like that. Like you cannot get pregnant all month. And actually, you have the power to decide that if you want to use a condom or just not to have sex during that fertile window. So,
I
yeah.
also think so many women, and unfortunately, when they go to their doctor and they're like, hey, I want to stop my birth control, they're met with a lot of resistance. And it can be very challenging. But, if that's something that you really want to do, there are lots of resources to learn how to monitor your body and to learn your own body. And there are options.
Got it. No, thank you so much. And Jordan, actually, since I have you here, and I'm going to get a little bit off topic about safe sex practices, but I want to ask you because I saw you posting about these the other day that about your luteal phase. So can you give us an overview about our menstrual cycle and what are the different phases and how might we feel during those phases?
Yeah. I would love to talk about that. I love to talk about periods and educate about them so much that I created a program all based on that. But there are 4 parts of your menstrual cycle. The first is going to be your follicular phase, which is where your egg or your follicle is growing. And then you have ovulation, where the egg is released and potential fertilization can happen. And then you have your luteal phase, which is after ovulation, where implantation of a potential embryo would happen. And then if implantation doesn't happen, that lining of the uterus sheds, and that is our menstrual cycle. So there are 4 phases. Everybody is a little bit different in how they respond to all parts of their menstrual cycle. And I always recommend that you monitor your own body, monitor your own symptoms and your own emotions. And what I've noticed for me personally is that in my follicular phase, I have more energy. I only record podcasts in my follicular and ovulatory phase because I know that that's when my energy is best and when I can sustain conversations. And then with my luteal phase, I'm moody. I want to be left alone. I don't want anything on my calendar. I want to sleep all day. And I've learned that I just keep my calendar clear. Not a good time for me to travel. I prefer to travel during even my menstrual cycle, but my menstrual cycle, follicular and ovulatory, I prefer to travel then over my luteal phase. And then with menstruation, everybody's a little bit different. For me, I start to get a little bit more energy, but for some people, it can knock them out and they need more rest during that time frame too.
Got it. And I'm also glad that you mentioned that, because I'm also at that point in my life where I'm trying to schedule my life according to my cycle, and I've noticed that when I travel during my luteal phase, I am bloated. I don't like anything. I could be in paradise and I'm going to be complaining. And it's not because I am ungrateful, it's just because my hormones are like a little wacky, and it's like if I had a gray cloud over my head. But then when I am ovulating, everything is wonderful and I just want to hug everyone and everything is rainbows and unicorns. And
isn't that funny how that works? Like, it's just crazy. And it's literally just a couple of hormones in our body that changes so much of how we feel and how our mood and our energy levels, just everything.
yeah. And I think it's very empowering to know that, because sometimes we just like are so hard on ourselves and we're like, oh, but what am I doing this? Or why am I feeling this way? And it's like, well, if you know why, it will be easier on you. It's like you will feel the same way every month. So
And it
yeah.
gives you so much grace and compassion for yourself when you understand this is a part of my body. This is a natural process. And I think that when I started scheduling my life around it, when I started paying attention to all of this, I just had so much more compassion for how my body reacted. And it really helped me.
That's amazing. And thank you so much for what you're doing and for educating women about this topic. Honestly, there are like 2 things that I have found very empowering. The first one is solo travel, and then the second one is knowing my body and then planning my life according to my cycles. And it's been life-changing, definitely.
I love that you are utilizing that tool, and it is life-changing and extremely empowering when you are able to have more data on yourself and understand yourself on a much deeper level.
Yeah, no, for sure, 100%. And it's all interconnected, because one of the reasons why I empower women to travel alone is to get to know themselves better. And it's not only about knowing what you're thinking as well, but also like your physical body, and then like those hormones that are changing, because also those hormones affect your thinking, and your thinking affects your emotion, and it's all interconnected. And of course your mental state, which I didn't mention, but it's all interconnected, so we got to take care of all that. So going back to our previous conversation, we got off topic here, but I think this is something that all of you should know, and look into more information about this, and check out Jordan's profile and podcast to get more information about it. So Jordan, what do you think are the most important things that women should keep in mind to stay safe and healthy while we travel? And we already mentioned points that were discussed before, but I want to, this is the end of the episode, so I want to like everyone to get that last piece of advice that is like, okay, hey, this is it.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is knowing your risk level. And what does safe sex look like for you? And I think that when you understand what your limits and boundaries are, it's going to greatly improve your sex life and improve the safety for you in all aspects.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah.
And Jordan, for anyone listening that wants to get in contact with you, where can they find you?
Yes, you can find me on Instagram at Jordan Donnell, JordanDnelle. You can also find my podcast on anywhere you listen to podcasts, Vaginas, Vulvas, and Vibrators. And yeah, that is the best place to find me.
Awesome. I'm sure to leave the links in the show notes. And Jordan, thank you so much for everything you shared with us. And actually, I just got an idea. I cannot let you go without asking you about like the craziest hookup story that you have had.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Okay. Yes. I have a wild story for you. I'm actually in the process of writing a book about my sexual experiences, but my favorite abroad experience was in the Dominican Republic. I picked up one of the guys working at the resort, and it's a wild, wild story. Me and my girlfriend had gone out there. We had met these guys. We went to the bar, and we didn't go home with them the first night. We went out with them the second night, and then we did end up going home to them and going to a hotel that we then named the Ho Ho Hotel.
Oh my God.
And it was crazy. You know, these poor guys probably spent their entire month's earnings on us in just a couple of days. And we had an amazing time. He spoke no English, very limited English, and I spoke very limited Spanish. So all of our conversations were really based on body language. And it was very passionate, very enjoyable. It was a very enjoyable experience, let me tell you. And that is kind of how it started. But how it ended is we ended up renting a car, and they took us to this most beautiful place. They wanted to show us the cathedral in the Dominican Republic and drove 3 hours with us to show us this. And then they took us to a private beach that only you knew about it if you knew about it, right? It's a kind of a beautiful beach. There was a jungle by the side. We went and hooked up in the rainforest or in the jungle. It was an amazing experience, and I cannot wait to complete writing that chapter in the book because it is so much fun.
Got it. Okay, so Dominican Republic, 2 guys from the resort, and then rented a car, took you guys to this very cool place, a cathedral, and then the rainforest. Okay.
Yes.
That's amazing. You know, that's the kind of stories that we travel for, you know, just to have those exotic experiences with, you know, people that we will be meeting in our hometown. And
yeah,
that's amazing. Well, can't wait to hear that story once you write it. So Jordan, thank you so much. And that question just came to my mind because I was pretty sure that you will have a cool story. And then also I wonder how that was, that no language, like a big language barrier and just body language. I know for sure that Dominicans are really good dancers, so I'm pretty sure that you dance a lot with them.
Yes, we did.
That's amazing. Then Jordan, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me.